Favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5 affirmative. Old business, property and liability insurance, Mr. Mayfield.
I just found that, so they were sent basically the email that you had sent me that had all the
Okay, and that's
information
in
on
that
it, so they did kind of have a little bit under it.
Okay, so we need to get in that package.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so we told you when we were here back in February that after we got all the policies, we would go out, we would do an inspection of all the properties, make sure that everything that was supposed to be on there was on there, that the values were correct. Matt and Dwayne were kind enough to take a morning and we went and looked at everything. In this first couple of pages that you have, we identified 11 items that were not, either didn't have an adequate limit or were not on there at all. And I can go through each one of those if you want, but they're on there, you know, there's 2 500-gallon fuel tanks at the water treatment plant. They were not listed on the prior policy. The generator wasn't on the prior policy, things like that. A lot of the stuff was the parts. There was some equipment, but not all of the equipment, and not the new equipment. And at the new Memorial Park, there was a lot of stuff that was not there. So if we make all of those changes, including the flagpole that we did was part of the kind of stuff. But anyway, if we include all of those, making all of those changes, increasing all of that value, which like some of it's going from 48,000 to 75,000, it's a $1,733 additional premium for the entire year. We didn't find anything that was underinsured, so we would need approval to make that change. The other things that we found, your workers' compensation policy did not have the classification 7710 requirement on it. That was a big omission on the prior policy. We've corrected that. That's already been done. The fire department, so you have work comp for some of the firemen under the IPEP policy for the, let me back up. They're all covered for medical under the work comp policy. It doesn't matter whether they're a reserve policeman, or reserve fireman, or full-time fireman, or actually any employee. They're covered for medical under the IPEP work comp policy. Where it gets a little goofy is reserves and non-employees that work for the fire department. So there's a statute that's been on the book for the fire department for 40 years probably, that you need to have what's called a sickness and accident policy. And there's a minimum weekly benefit that those people, because they're not employees and they're not paid a normal wage like a normal employee would be, the statute says that in the event that they're hurt, the indemnity, they can collect $290 a week for their time off. That's in statute. You didn't have that coverage. You had a policy that gave $100 a week, so then you meet the minimum requirement. So we canceled that policy, rewritten it to a new policy. For the reserve law enforcement, there's been a statute on the books for 5 years. I know that because my wife wrote the statute that mirrors the reserve firemen. And you didn't have a policy for that at all. So we wrote that policy, which was $389. So it's not a big dollar amount, but you didn't have it, and you definitely did need it. So that is in place. We've already got approval on that. The fire department policy, we've already fixed that. And we actually did this nice little bucket that, because it is very confusing on the volunteer firemen and the career firemen and the full-time firemen, where the coverage comes from. And this came up, unfortunately, you had your assistant fire chief was injured, minor injury, and based on the information we had, we submitted it to this bucket. When they did some calls and said, no, that's not the right bucket. And so there was some confusion that somebody thought that there wasn't gonna be coverage, it's just that we had submitted to the wrong bucket based on the information we had. It's been since corrected, and I think those bills, I saw an email today where, there was a couple medical bills that came to you guys that, they're taken care of. They should have gone directly to IPEP, but, for some reason they came here before it was IPEP, so that's being taken care of. So the last page, well, my last page, is just a recap of what we did. The package with Travelers last year was 132,000, ours was 118. The cyber liability, I don't know what it was last year, ours is 4,200. The reserve police and asset policy, there was no coverage, ours is 389. The work comp was 22,000, it's 23,000. That's probably just a rate change, the rates change on some of those classifications every year. The reserve fireman and asset policy with the wrong coverage was $4,100, ours is $2,900 with the correct coverage. Then the flood coverage for the shop, ours is a little bit more expensive on both of those, but not much. But you see, we don't know what that cyber coverage was, but what we do know the premiums, you were 151 and you were 152 for everything. And we were asked a question about what you should budget for next year. Remember, our policy for the auto and any equipment, if you add a new vehicle, there's no charge for that during this policy term. So that's the beauty of that particular policy, is whatever you pay, if you add a new building, that's a different story, but and if you have a piece of equipment that's over, I think it's $100,000, we have to add for that, but like normal Bobcats or things like that, or a new fire truck, they're being charged for this year. If we pick it up at renewal, which everybody would do that. So that, from a budgeting standpoint, I think that makes it a little bit easier to track. The other thing that we quoted on the volunteer fireman, the sickness and accident policy, $290 a week is the minimum. That's the minimum by statute that you have to have, which is what you have now. Two things, we don't have a coverage for career firemen, which your assistant chief works more than 25 hours on average. He would be the only one when we went through and did the whole roster of people. He's the only one. It's about $400 to add that endorsement on there. I would recommend it because other fire departments that we have sometimes have nobody that works more than 25 hours a year, and then sometimes they do, and if they do, then they also have coverage under that part of the policy, so they have it in two buckets. It's $400. Let's see if she did that too. It's $448 more a year. If you wanted to increase that weekly benefit from $290 to $500, which is the maximum you can do for the firemen, it's $281. Or if you add the career rider, it's $806. So it'd be about another $1,000. It would go from $290 a week to $500 a week. But right now you're at the $290, which is the statutory limit. So, any questions? There's a lot to go through.
So I've got two, and one is just to verify the claim that was in question has been resolved.
Yes.
Okay. It took a little while to answer.
Yeah, once we got into the right bucket, it was.
Okay, I just want to make sure that was. So the long and short of it is we saved about $8,500 and have some additional coverages that we didn't have before. Is that
Yes.
it?
Yeah.
Switching compliance.
Yeah, just basically put in compliance with what the state statute says. So luckily, you had a claim on that coverage before. And law enforcement would have been bad because there was no coverage. Not only wrong coverage, is no coverage. Well, I'll just say your former agent knew about that because he called me and asked me about it because he didn't understand it. That for the renewal like that, because it was a new statute 5 years ago. So he didn't work in that area with a lot that had a lot of reserves. And actually, Johnson County was an account of it, and that's the one that the sheriff called and asked me about it. And I said, "This is what it is. It's not a big deal. It's just you got to have it." So we would need approval if you want to make the changes on the, what was it, 11 items? On the 11 items, we would need approval on that, and then, so that would be first. And then if you want to add that endorsement for the career fireman, 400, whatever it was,
448.
448. And then if you want to change the dollar amount, which you don't have to, but I would encourage you to do the career fireman in case we run into that again where we have somebody, it's not 30 hours, which is your definition of full-time, part-time. There's just 25 hours. So you had, as I went through, I took the total hours, I took the total amount paid by the total hours, and you had, the assistant chief was over, and you had one or two others that were like in the 20-hour average range. So it wouldn't take a lot for them to go over that 25, or hit the 25.
So the 448 would only cover adding one. If these other two,
It doesn't matter if you have one. Once we have one on there, then there's coverage.
okay,
And there's only one. There's only one right now. So
okay. But if the other two happen to bump up to 26 hours,
they pick that up at renewal.
Okay.
At the next year. They don't make a change.
okay.
I have a question. Is that one career fireman get named, or let's just say anyone
No.
during the year has needs a claim, they can go for anyone?
Yeah. They don't ask for a roster. They take my word for it.
You guys have any other questions? Do we have a motion to approve the changes?
I'll move to approve the changes.
I'll second.
Second by John Purdy.
Can we clarify on the changes whether you are also
The first,
the first
Not-
of the
not-
11? Is that what you?
yeah,
what
the
your motion
11,
is?
not the 448.
Okay, I just want to get it right
Yeah,
in the record.
I
Okay.
want to do that
So the
separate.
11, yeah, the 11 items.
Yeah,
Okay, Schlotsky and then,
and Purdy.
okay.
Other questions?
Nope.
Hello? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5 affirmative. Now, do we want to add the rider for the career firefighter? And do we want to change the weekly dollar amount? You said that was how much to make it 500?
It's about $1,000.
What,
Instead of 800. So it's like.
Yeah, it's 281 for the one and 800 for the, it's 806 for the career, it's 281 for just the regular, volunteer fireman.
What were those numbers again?
281 and then 806, so instead of being, yeah, so it's,
1096.
yeah, so it's about, right at 1,100 bucks actually, that's 1,000, about 1,100.
I mean, we're talking $100 a month for asking somebody to be out there, and if they get hurt.
I'm in favor of
Yeah.
it because, taking care of our people in case of the
Yeah.
worst case scenarios.
Yeah.
If you're waiting for a motion, I'll go ahead and make that motion as well.
John
I didn't want to be a motion hog.
Doesn't bother you any other time.
And it begins, folks.
Second by Chad. Questions, comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5 affirmative.
Okay, we'll make those changes.
Thank you.
Thank you
Appreciate
very
it.
much.
That help?
Yeah, thank you, those,
They were very
They were-
helpful. very
Good.
we rode around
helpful.
for, I don't know, 3 or 4 hours and,
Yeah, they showed us everything.
yeah.
Good. Does that help you guys, Dave?
Yeah, hopefully we never need it, but it's nice to know it's there.
Okay. Alrighty. Building inspection fees.
So if you remember right, I brought it to you at the April, I think it was, May meeting, I'm sorry. And it was kind of a pretty quick, look. It was, you guys really just got it, so you wanted some more time to look at it. So this would be an update to the, fee schedule, that we currently have, to help say offset, but would pick up that cost where we had hired GRW to kind of take over those duties, the inspections and all that stuff. They're the ones that put the fee schedule together so that it would, offset that cost. So currently, we're using it, when we bring in the money from the fee schedule now, we're actually losing money. The town's paying money out that we're not gaining from those permits and stuff. This would pretty well make it a wash. So, I don't know if you had time to kind of look at those.
Yeah, I think everybody did, and you know, that's kind of what we were wanting to do, is just at least break even. So
One other thing to add to it is there's a couple things that are not on the fee schedule that GRW came up with that we had on our other one, as far as like driveway permits and our, I guess sewer permits, people do laterals and things like that. It talks with them, that kind of falls under the sanitation, the lateral permits and stuff, falls under utilities, so that's something we'll have to address. We can keep it at the current fee, we have it now, and then, the driveway permits is kind of something that she said normally would fall under, like the streets and things like that, so that's something that I'll have to try to look at and address, but this kind of gets the big bulk of everything.
as far as the others, is that something we would have to do a public hearing, or we can just approve?
The other fees, no, and I actually don't. There's no requirement that you approve this fee schedule. I think that the plan commission sort of delegated to Matt, and I think Matt wanted to share this with you and have sort of your support and approval of it. But the fees can be set by the plan commission. And
I guess I was under the impression that
it was. That's what we did at the plan commission.
Okay.
That was what we did, was that you would, and then present it to the council for approval, because that's what we've done. And ultimately, you know, the collecting of the money is revenue of the town. But I think the discretion lies with the plan commission. So I think if you don't have any objections or questions, then if you haven't voiced them, if not, I think Matt can go ahead and implement it.
Questions, comments?
Nope.
Objections? There you go. Angela, any old business? Lee?
Yeah. Let's see, lots of things. The wheel tax. I gave you bad information at the last meeting. You adopted the wheel tax ordinance because I told you that as a condition of receiving community crossing grant money, we would have to impose a wheel tax. And I told you that it would not be a double tax. The way House Bill 1461 had been written, if a municipality imposes a wheel tax and the county can't. Right at the end, right very close to the date on which it was enacted, changes were made to the House bill. And I didn't know about it. I had no idea the changes were made. I didn't realize that it was still so fluid, but learned after the fact. I think John Parent actually pointed me to information he had gained that at the very last minute changes were made. The ones that you care most about are, it is no longer a condition of community crossing grant award that you impose a wheel tax locally. That's been stripped out. And the either county or municipality restriction was stripped out. And so if you impose the wheel tax, which is also wheel tax and excise tax, the residents of New Whiteland will be taxed twice, because there's no reason to think that Johnson County is not going to continue to impose the wheel tax like it has in the past. My assumption is you will want to rescind that ordinance, because conversations we had leading up to that were focused on, will it be a double tax? John Purdy was particularly interested in that. And the answer now is yes. And then part of the decision was driven by, well, we got to. I even said to you, this decision makes itself. I crawled way out there on that little bitty limb, got out there and didn't have it break off on me at the meeting, but it broke off shortly thereafter. And that's not true. It was changed. And I think, I'm not going we won't get into such a big conversation about this. We'll wait until maybe the night where we have Adam Stone here. But I think there was some pushback to that, and ultimately some deals cut that changes to the legislation went through because some of those key parts of that House bill were stripped out. Now, I did not bring tonight an ordinance to rescind that ordinance and wheel tax. It sits there. It has to be delivered to the Bureau of Motor Vehicles before anything takes effect, because they have to know that the ordinance is adopted to know to impose the tax and then pay it to the town. So it's sitting there. We also got from Adam Stone just a few minutes before I left my office, I emailed it to you as I was leaving, a proposal for him to come here and talk to you about any number of things. One of which would be the annexation appeal that you talked about with him a little bit before, and whether there is additional money to be made by the town if we file an annexation appeal for the new ground that was annexed. And he can explain to you what the upside of that is and what the process is, so you understand that better than we do now. And I think he likely will encourage you to do that and to calendar every year doing that to keep up with the additional levy that you can collect because we have annexed additional ground. But we've also asked him to give us a proposal on the implications of Senate Bill 1 and what that means to New Whiteland, and what strategies you have available to you to overcome the loss of a mind-numbing amount of property tax revenue next year. And I think what you're going to hear is if you don't impose local taxes, the town won't be able to function. You simply have to replace the revenue that's being taken away. And what's happened is the state has decided it's going to be a good guy and lower everybody's property tax and make you go get in their pockets to replace the revenue by imposing local tax, which you've never done in the past. I mean, that's how this is shaking out. And he is offering to come here to explain that on the same night that he would talk about the annexation appeal. So I need you to also decide to look at his proposal, and if you are prepared to, having just gotten it, it's really short, having just gotten it, whether you're prepared tonight to go ahead and engage him, commit to have him come, pay his fee, and schedule a special meeting on July 16th, because I think that's a night when everyone's available. That works for you, right? Yeah. The reason I'm mixing all this together is the wheel tax ordinance can sit there until that night, whatever that night turns out to be, knowing that you're going to have to look for other ways to generate revenue for the town. One of the ways is a wheel tax. I predict that you still will decide to repeal that ordinance and not impose a wheel tax, because the wheel tax that you collect can only be spent on, let's just say generally, roads. And the MVH money that we have gotten historically, that Dwayne has used to keep the roads in good order and to match the community crossing grant that makes us eligible for it, our 25% match. We're going to still get that. I don't think Senate Bill 1's going to have much effect on that. And so I think you probably won't collect any wheel tax to provide more money for the same uses that money has been used for in the past, because that's not where the need is. I think you're probably going to have to impose local income tax to make up the loss of the property tax revenue. So still, once all that shakes out, I think you'll decide, well, no, we're not going to double tax our folks and collect a wheel tax locally, given the changes at the last minute in the House bill. But there's no urgency in you rescinding that ordinance tonight. My thought is, let's have Adam come and talk about it in a more global way. And then we have ample time to rescind that wheel tax ordinance before it would ever take effect. And again, if I don't send it off to the Bureau, it's not gonna take effect anyway, because the Bureau doesn't know we adopted it. And I'm not gonna send it to them until you ultimately say to me, yes, we wanna go ahead with this. And I think you're ultimately gonna say to me, no, we don't wanna go ahead with this. So that's the reason I'm linking the two together. That's the status of the wheel tax legislation. That's where we are in all of that. We have an ordinance sitting there. It's kind of like an egg that's been laid, but it's not being incubated yet. And we have this proposal from Adam that just came. He's for a fee of $10,000 is offering a scope of services that would be an explanation of the annexation appeal, and I think engaging in the process of applying for it, to explain to you and discuss strategies related to changes in the real estate tax legislation, which is SB1, and to respond to ad hoc questions and other issues that may be brought up. And we'll prepare for that and is available on July 16th. So there's all that. The wheel tax ordinance we adopted last month is the old business that I'm referring to when I asked whether I had old business, but I know I've thrown more at you there than just that. So I don't know whether you want to just, there's what I have to say, move on through old business, come back around to Adam's thing, a new business, or whether you want to go on and dive into this now.
I'm okay with putting the wheel tax thing off until July. Just because it's not, as long as it's not gonna no effect, because I know that was one thing you were real strong on, is we're not gonna double tax. I think everybody else was in agreement.
Sorry, and one more thing is we will still get our share of the county wheel tax like we have in the past.
Right.
Okay.
As far as with Adam Stone, when he was here the last time, several months ago, I think everybody was very encouraged by what he had to tell us. And the more I keep hearing about this is, I wish we would have had Adam Stone 20 years ago. Because so many things that we're dealing with now, we would not have to deal with. We just weren't aware. People weren't doing what he does now. And yes, $10,000 sounds like a lot of money, but I think we'll get that back recouped many times over by what he has to offer us. Just my thoughts.
My thoughts, we need some assistance, with this, because, even the school district's dealing with SB1 and the same things that, the municipalities are. And we have a lot of outside assistance that is helping us navigate what this is gonna look like.
We talked to Adam earlier this year about coming in before SB1 and helping us through the process, what we have to do about the annexation.
Yeah.
And I think that was $8,500. I mean, I think this is reasonable. And again, particularly, I don't know, percentage-wise, we might lose a property tax, but I think we need to understand that and understand what we need to do about it.
I agree. So,
I'll make a motion that we approve it.
okay, I have a motion by John Purdy,
I will second.
second by Dennis. Other questions, comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
What?
No, I'm just winding up. July 16th, can we commit to that being the night of a special meeting for him to come?
5 o'clock?
I think everybody was okay.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
Is that time-wise gonna give him ample time to get down here?
They have said that works for them.
Okay.
Yeah, that works for me.
5 affirmative, Angela.
Yeah.
16th was the Wednesday date.
It's
right?
the Wednesday. It's the Wednesday. It's the Wednesday.
Do you have anything else, sir?
No.
Chad?
No, sir.
John?
Old business, I suppose, at the subdivision. What's going on? Have there been any developments, any complications?
So I was going to talk to you about it because you'll be getting a letter. Gratis is asking for an amendment to their primary plat. It's got to go back to the planning commission, what, June 16th, 17th, whatever that.
17th.
17th. So you'll be getting a letter just because obviously where you live. It has been, I'll just come out and say, it's been a horrible experience. It's been awful dealing with. I don't expect to see much anything from the planning commission as far as what they're asking for. That's just in my opinion. I haven't talked obviously with anybody, any members, but there will be updates June 17th.
Do you know what they want to change?
So they are asking for waivers to the entrance requirements and a waiver to our street and our road and street construction standards. As well as, I think it was it the addition to 2 or 3 lots, something like that.
Three more lots.
In the townhome section. But the road and the entrances has been really the biggest cluster that we've dealt with and haven't want to move forward because they can start doing what they said they were gonna do.
Does that have anything to do with the traffic studies or it's something else?
That's part of their reasoning as to why they're wanting to do that. They're trying to say that some of the verbiage in the commitments, Liam, am I okay to go to this direction?
Yeah.
So they're wanting to try and say that the verbiage in the commitments alleviate them based on what the traffic study says. The issue is early on in the process, prior to any plans or any documents being submitted, they have our construction standards. And it very clearly states on the drawing for the entrance requirements that these are the minimum standards and that there is no alteration from them unless they come to a meeting and do that. They have been told that multiple times. They have finally come around to doing that, and that's where we are at this point. So still dealing with it. So long story short, there's no movement on the development other than the house is being burnt and trees being removed, and honestly, kind of left in an eyesore at this point.
When's that planning meeting?
17th of June.
17th.
June.
17th at 6.
And we do know they've closed on the purchase, right? Everybody knows that. They own the property. It's not none of these dangling issues or conditions of them buying it. They closed. So that makes it pretty difficult for them to turn back at this point. But it has been quite tedious, and they certainly, under our ordinance and the procedures that are made available, can request amendments to the plat. They can request waivers of construction standards. I don't think I've ever seen a preliminary plat amended and represented, but I also, if they have rethought what the plat requires of them and are wanting to ask for approval to do something different, that's their prerogative, and that's what they're doing. I don't think that it ultimately changes the outcome. I think they're going to develop the property as a single family subdivision because they've already committed the money to buy it. But yeah, they're asking for some things to be changed, and we're going through the process in the way we best understand how it needs to be done.
So planning would review and make whatever recommendation the council would have
No. So because this is an amendment to the plat, the actual design and drawing, that is a function of the Plan Commission only.
Okay.
If they sought to amend the PUD ordinance,
Gotcha. Okay.
it would come back here.
Okay.
And they haven't. Right?
Okay.
So whatever decision is made by the Plan Commission that night is the decision, and it's a final decision, unless the Plan Commission would decide to continue the decision, table it, and decide it at a later date.
I'd like to attend. Mayor may not be able to that night. The bank has a board meeting that may end in time, but I'd like to be here for it if I can.
If you're wanting to see the application and the amended plat ahead of time and submit a written,
Yeah, I'd like
that's
to see
certainly, that's available to you.
Yeah, I'd like
If
to
you
see
want.
it, yeah.
And when is that meeting?
June 17th.
17th at 6 p.m.
So, not related, but the project that's also a business going on Tracy and, Centerline, there's stakes in all the yards. What do those stakes
So
represent?
that is part of the 2025 road improvement.
Right,
project.
right, oh, I'm familiar.
That's just right away,
Right.
state right away right now. That was something that we didn't have. On some of these other construction projects, we knew what right of way was, but I could not find for all the maps and all
Gotcha.
that type of stuff, what the right of way was. That's why I came to you guys at the last meeting to do the survey for that, and that's exactly what those are. So that is down the New Whiteland Road right of way, clear back that far. Now, to be clear, because I'm sure that there's people listening on YouTube, that does not mean that the road is being widened that far. In fact, it's not getting widened at all. It's just the curb's going back in the same place, and the sidewalk is getting widened to 6 foot, so that buffer strip between there is gonna be gone.
So the sidewalk can start at the curb and go 6 feet?
Yep,
Okay.
yep.
And I don't know if he explained it in that last meeting for a survey. The big reason why we had to have the right of way staked was because there was some meter pits that needed to be moved. So that sidewalk and Indian American Water required that they knew where the right of way was, and we didn't have the drawings. So
Right.
basically, it's so that they could move
Yeah.
their stuff with inside that.
That all makes sense. Yeah, I was concerned about where those stakes were because I own one of the houses, but especially on Tracy Road, that would eliminate most of the driveway for some of those houses. So I'm glad to hear that's not,
Yeah,
it's not expanding that far.
Yeah, it's not going back that far. It's just currently, everything's staying where it is, just some little tweaks and stuff there. We just had to have it to move the utilities back. Because honestly, they're right in the sidewalk, and we can't have that with ADA requirements and all that sort of type of stuff, so.
So to just make sure I heard right, the curbs will go back where they are, the sidewalk will start at the curb and
Yep.
extend 6 feet.
Yep,
Okay,
yep.
good.
Anything else? John? Joe, old business?
Yes, sir. I got, 3 bids for a vehicle. I've got money in my budget for it. And, I didn't have time to run copies for everybody, if you'd like to see them. Well, let's do it here. I can briefly go over real quick with you. We checked with Fletcher, and they have, and there's 24s by the way. But it's nickel plated, which is a color that's silver or comparable to what we've already got. I can buy one at Fletcher for $40,520, and with it outfitted by the time we get it, with the emergency vehicle, lights and all on it, would be $55,520. John Jones, we checked with them, same vehicle, for $1,641 difference. Their prices, the price on the vehicle alone is $42,161 as opposed to the $45,020. I checked with Ford with Stillman, and in order to buy a vehicle there, it's $50,590, and there's a 3 to 6 month wait on the vehicle itself. And by the time I get it outfitted, it's $65,590. And Angela, I don't know if you had a brokerage sheet there, but I got we appropriated 60-some.
65,000 is what was appropriated, and that included the vehicle and the outfitting, so if it's 55, you're
So I'll be
under
right
that.
under that.
What kind of vehicle is it?
It's a 2024 Dodge Durango.
Okay.
So with those 3 bids, if it's okay with you before I lose that vehicle,
Is that one they have in stock down there? Because I've seen one silver one down there.
it was a couple of weeks ago, I went to the meeting, 3 bids, so.
What's our experience with Durangos on the force?
So far, we've had good luck with them. There's Dodge has got the police package that they put on it. There are some Fords out there, but most of the vehicles you're gonna see are the Dodge Durangos or the Dodge Chargers.
How many do we have in our existing fleet?
2,
So this will make 3.
yes, sir.
Okay.
Other questions? Nope. Somebody wanna make a
We'll
motion?
make a motion to proceed with the Fletcher purchase.
Okay.
Second.
By Chad, other questions, comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? By McCormick. Joe, you got anything else?
No, sir, that's it, thank you.
David? Old business?
I got new business. If I
We're
can
not
get
there
all
yet.
the 40s to-
You guys have any old business? Okay. Westler on call. Matt?
So you guys were sent that, with the issues we were having up in Raintree, with the lift station and the I&I, that kind of made that problem even worse. So I don't know, is there, what other information you want to add? I know we've had that conversation kind of via email, it was kind of to ratify that decision. There is money in the budget. I think we're gonna transfer money from one appropriation to another. So it's not anything, we're not gonna be asking for an additional appropriation at this current moment. So,
Okay.
That's
So
no
this-
transfer tonight, right?
yeah, I believe so.
So this just ratifies what we talked about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So was part of that they were gonna help us figure where the intrusion is?
Yes, so that is strictly basically what that is. As far as the issues at the lift station, at the current moment, everything is operational the way it needs to be. What I feel kind of has caused the issues at that lift station is this I&I, because like I told you, there's times when we have big rain events. I've got both pumps. Normally throughout a normal day, we're around 7 hours a day between both pumps. We get 1.5, 2, 3 inches of rain, we had that few months ago. I had one pump that ran 24 hours straight, another one that ran for 18 hours, all in that same day. Just puts a lot of wear and tear on that equipment. I think that's kind of what, pushed the issues that we have over there. But right now we've got everything straightened out. I actually sent back, because I had rented a rental pump just in case, because like I said, we had issues with it backing up into a few houses up there. And so I didn't want that to happen against it. So I had rented that backup pump just in case. Didn't end up needing it, but that station, like I said, is up running now, and we've actually already found quite a few issues in that. One in particular was actually in Tracy Ridge, which really was very surprising. That goes to that station as well. There was a crack in one of the PVC pipes there that was probably, what they say, about 5 gallon a minute, which I know doesn't sound like a whole much, but that's one out of a little bit, Obviously that isn't, it hasn't been repaired yet. They're gonna once they get everything together, we'll get a report, and then I can get that back to you for what kind of repairs we're looking at.
With that being PVC, is that something they'll still be able to line?
Yes, that, I will tell you, that is probably the way things in talking with them and things that we found, that's probably gonna be, the process moving forward for a lot of the repairs that they are finding is gonna be, finding those. That up in Ranger, a lot of that system is, still clay pipe. So it's just old and leaking through joints and things like that, so. But hopefully here in the not so distant future, I'll actually have some really good information for you moving forward. So.
And was that crack found with our camera or their camera?
That one was found with theirs. That one was.
Dang.
So now I will say, so I've had ours up in through Raintree, as well. I found what I believe is a sump pump that is actually connected in up there, which could be a big factor as well. So that's been noted in our reports for that, and kind of seeing a lot of those same things and cracks and joints, or you can kind of see where calcium's built up, so you know that it's something that's been leaking for a while with our camera and stuff.
Yep.
So it's making it go a lot quicker, with them being able to be in there and us, so.
Okay. That it?
Yep, so just ratify that.
Okay. Yeah, we do need a motion to ratify that contract with Westler.
I'll make a motion
Motion by John Purdy, second by Dennis. Questions, comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5 affirmative. New business, Angela? Lee?
Yeah, sorry. You got an email, another email late in the day about the interlocal cooperation agreement between Whiteland, New Whiteland, and Johnson County for the roundabout at Sawmill and Whiteland. Here it is. Do you all see it? Did you
Yes.
get your email or? And how did I
have
get
a
this?
printed copy right there, yeah, I did that one, but not the other one, because I ran to get a drink.
No, a drink.
When you sent the Adam Stone one.
Like to a bar?
No, I got soda,
Boy,
soda.
okay.
It's
Had to run to get a drink.
just green soda.
All right. I hope that wasn't an embarrassing question.
I'm good.
So, I think you know the background on this. The MPO awarded this project, finance for this project, back some time ago. It is to construct a roundabout, much needed roundabout at Sawmill and Whiteland Road. There is a collaboration between Johnson County, Whiteland, and New Whiteland to build this thing. We've been a little uncertain over the last couple of months about whether the county was going to stay as committed to it as what we thought to start with. It was going to be a third, and a third shared cost. Most of the cost will be paid for by the MPO funding, but that part that has to be out of pocket was going to be shared equally by the three entities. The county's backed off that sum. They, for a little while, were just going to pay their third of the soft costs, the engineering and design costs. They then have come back and agreed to pay a third of those costs and then an additional amount, up to a total of $224,000, about another $80,000, $90,000 that they will contribute toward the construction costs. So when we talk about costs, we're talking about the design and engineering and all that soft stuff that you always have, and then you have the hard costs of the actual construction. And it was going to be a third, and a third. Now it's a third and a third, and the county agreeing to $224,000 max, which Dwayne can speak to, may not quite get them to a total, to a third.
It does.
But again, well,
It
it's
does.
going to.
What
Okay.
they did, the reason they did that was they wanted to put a verbiage in there to give them a cap.
Yeah.
Because of all the stuff going on, but that is right
As it
there.
stands, that'll get them.
Yeah,
Okay.
that'll get them the third.
Okay. So, the town's share will be something close to that for our cost. Dwayne has the money. It's an interlocal cooperation agreement that kind of imposes on everybody kind of all the same obligations. The part that is of interest, I think, for New Whiteland is Whiteland has the lead on this. Whiteland has more authority, discretion on the final design. Ultimately, they are the agency of the three that gets sort of final approval on that, although New Whiteland has the opportunity to review and comment and have input on that final design. Whiteland will be the agency that enters into the contracts with the engineer and the contractor. So when we get to that part, it will be Whiteland contracting to have the project done. New Whiteland's role will be to contribute our share of the money to fund the cost of getting the project done. But it will be a Whiteland project.
Will we have any say as far as what they design?
We will have say, but ultimate approval rests with Whiteland.
So if they decide they want to put a pedestrian bridge in, we've got to pay for a third of that?
No, it's still, the scope of the project is defined. I think, sort of final plans, within the scope of what is the
That's
the
a
project.
stupid example, but I'm just saying, by signing this, are we locking ourselves into a third of this cost, no matter what the cost turns out to be?
What the cost turns out to be?
Yeah.
Well, we are, yeah, except for the cost to go up, their share has to go up
I
too.
don't understand that.
Right, and the project has already been presented to MPO and has been approved as this scope of project.
Gotcha.
So I think that the interest on Whiteland's part is somebody's got to be able to drive this thing.
Somebody has to be in charge.
Yeah, right. But I'll let Dwayne speak to this in a minute. I think that causes Dwayne it's a little unsettling because we ultimately can't sort of intervene in such a way that we can insist that the final design be changed in any particular way. We aren't going to be able to be out there on the ground and interfere with the relationship between Whiteland and the contractor on whether they're doing things correctly, whether a change order ought to be approved. We have every reason to think that we're going to be consulted in all of that, but that's how it's going to be structured, or that's how the agreement has it structured now. Go ahead and elaborate.
So, totally get some consternation on you guys' point, and from the design side of it, what I didn't want to see. New Whiteland has 3/4, we have the majority share of that intersection at this point, and that is in the town of New Whiteland. And what I didn't want to see with Whiteland being the lead on the project, which somebody has to be, what I didn't want to see is the final design end up with this is going to sound really bad, but I didn't want a big old Whiteland sign sitting in the middle of New Whiteland territory. Or New Whiteland city limits. I don't want, every other cul-de-sac, or not cul-de-sac, but roundabout has something in the middle of it, some type of design. So I wanted to have some type of control over that. I'm still a little bit leery about how that is, but when it comes down to it, the major concerns of the design are stormwater runoff. We have a storm drain right there, and with us being able to have input into how the final design ends up being, makes both Matt and I feel a little bit more comfortable of it, moving forward. The big issues on my side of it at this point, because, and Lee and I have had multiple conversations about this whole process, and we recognize the fact that there needs to be a roundabout there. If we push back too hard from our side, with Whiteland being the lead on this, they could turn around and say, we don't want to do it, and then turn around, and now we've all recognized that there needs to be a roundabout there, and we're going to be on the hook for the majority of it at that point, because it falls through the MPO. It's done. They wash their hands of it, and it's out of it. We are going to have to come back with the design and do a roundabout at that point. Go ahead.
Is the reason they're the lead because of the MPO?
Yeah, they took the bull by
They took the bull by the horns from the initial side of it. I mean, they did. I want to be clear because I think I know exactly where you're going with this, because you were here at the time, and there may be some of the other ones that remember. I've been told about it, I wasn't privy to it, but we have a road segment right outside these doors that the town of New Whiteland foot the bill for the whole thing. That's not all our road. So that is the type of stuff that I am trying to be very careful of moving forward, and I have laid that out to Carmen on that. I said, You may not have been here, I said, but in order to make this happen, we need to talk and communicate, and there has to be some, communication through the whole process. The interlocal agreement was introduced to us. Lee read through it. I read through it. I had some consternation. We made a few changes. It went back to both of them. They went through it. They made some changes, and we've ultimately ended up right here. I think, Lee, you're comfortable with it. I'm as comfortable as I can be right now. There are still some things that need to be worked out on the tail end of it, but not as part of this interlocal agreement. It comes down to the maintenance side of it. Who's going to be responsible for it? Who takes ownership of it at that point? So this.
Well, and I was I actually just thought about this, because I know one of the big concerns I had, and Dwayne had mentioned it, was drainage. Even though Whiteland has final say on design, we still, as far as from that side of things, because it would be draining into new Whiteland system, we would still have final say if that is where things could go, which again is going to affect the final design of things. So we still have a little, like that's not going to be taken away from us, correct?
Well, once it gets outside of the project area, however the design structure is to receive that water, at some point that falls back on us anyway.
Okay, all right, so that kind of, I didn't think about that before when we had these conversations, but that kind of alleviates some of my stress from a drainage side of things that we still.
Which is drainage is a big concern. I don't know how to make this better. So, Whiteland took the lead. Whiteland got out in front of this thing and was driving it. Great news, we got funding, right, for a project that will benefit New Whiteland in a big way, but certainly Whiteland and the county too. We had a little bit of problem with the county, I think, because there was this view that it's now an area that is annexed by Whiteland or New Whiteland. So why do we have any interest in this at all, the county? Why would we pay any money at all? And we had to kind of make the point that because your county cars are driving through here all the time, because you're the county out here and you're the county out here, and your county traffic is going to use this corridor, and so your stakeholders, your constituents are going to benefit from this improvement being done. There's still some county ground in pretty close proximity to this, and it's going to generate traffic that drives through it, and that all came together just fine, and they're right where they started out, and that worked out great. But I don't know how New Whiteland displaces Whiteland and sort of having a sort of a majority interest in this as opposed to us. It's not going to be at all well received for us to say, well, either we build into this dispute resolution mechanism or something so that we are prepared for disagreements and ways to resolve them if they turn up. I think I can't speak for Whiteland, I can't speak for Carmen. I've heard what Dwayne has reported back to me, but I think that there is a sort of tentativeness about it on Whiteland's side that if because we try to make it better for New Whiteland, it becomes tedious or more burdensome for Whiteland than what it already is. I think it's possible they could say, okay, well, you know what, this is more trouble than it's worth for us, and so we're just going to pull out. And I think that we think that is not it's not a threat hanging over our heads, but it's possible. It's not likely, but we're concerned enough about them deciding that this is more trouble than it's worth, that we don't want to push them out of the project or out of the agreement.
I think if you all choose to go through and make the decision not to sign the interlocal agreement, I think then at that point the county will be done with it. They won't approve it. I think my feeling is that like he was saying, I think the town of Whiteland will wash their hands of it. But regardless of how this goes, part of it, that intersection is still Whiteland, part of it is still New Whiteland. So even if this goes away from the NPO, and we choose not to do the interlocal agreement, at some point, we're gonna have to do an interlocal agreement with the town of Whiteland.
Well, we won't. I mean, they could always say, we're not gonna do it.
They could.
I
Well,
mean,
yeah,
right? It would be, to us, it would be foolhardy for them not to also want this
correct.
roundabout to be there, because that's what's needed.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that, I'm not saying that to try and force you guys' hands in any way, shape, or form, just trying to give you all the.
I think your questions surely are, well, can we make it better for New Island than what it is in the version that you have before us? And we have not negotiated aggressively and made demands and insisted on trying to change it very much. Lynn Gray was hired by Whiteland because of a conflict we have with Stephen Watson in my firm, typically writing Whiteland, representing Whiteland. So Lynn had done the agreement for Whiteland and the county out of Graham Road or wherever that is, and kind of used that as a template for this. It is an interlocal cooperation agreement. It is not an agreement, although we are adverse parties. The whole idea for these is for public agencies to come together and collaborate on a project or in an effort that is mutually beneficial to both of them. Whiteland can't do something that drives the cost of this up without paying its third of it. I mean, there's some incentive built in there for them not to do something foolish because it's costing them money just the same as it is us. I don't have any reason to think that anybody's coming into this with any hidden agenda or any ill intent. And I know the history of Whiteland and New Whiteland when it relates to roads, but man, that's history now. It just is. And Dwayne knows it too. We had this real problem. You could liken it to some feud about how Tracy Road was going to get developed or improved years and years and years ago. And John Perrin's mom was dropping him off for these meetings. I mean, it was a long time ago, but we still remember it. And we don't want to put ourselves in a position where we have problems like that in the future. Different people there, different people here. We have an agreement in place. Dwayne and I would very much like for this agreement to include in it maintenance provisions for how this gets cared for over the decades to come. Lynn Gray tells me she doesn't have an appetite, and Whiteland doesn't have an appetite for trying to thread all that into this agreement now. But we do have sort of a promise that we'll get this done and get it settled and get the county locked in so the project can move forward. And then we'll go back and pick that back up and see if we can't figure out a way to talk about how it gets operated and maintained going forward. A little bit of a leap of faith there.
Can I ask a couple questions, just in general? Number one, what does the maintenance of a roundabout entail?
Well, well, you know better than me. Pavement pavement and curbs and drainage and things that deteriorate and crack and fail over years to come. And there's maybe a little bit of grass or landscape feature in there too. I guess what we worry about is, well, you take care of that. No, you take care of that. Or we want to put a sign in there, or you want to put a sign there, or we want to advertise the town and the elected officials, and we have this obnoxious sign that everyone that lives in New Island is going to drive by every day and be confused about where the town started and where the town stopped, things like that.
Well, can these things be, and I think you said that there's no appetite to really do amendments to
Now, in this agreement, I don't know that they're not willing to enter into an amendment to this or a separate agreement that talks about how we own and manage and use this thing going forward. I think the concern about New Whiteland saying, we're not signing it unless that stuff's in there too. I think our concern is the county's gonna go, we didn't really much want to be in this anyway.
Mm-hmm. Well,
And so we're trying to kind of catch this prey and make sure we've locked it down. And then try to go back and make it better after we get on the other side of this, in part because the county won't have any involvement in an agreement about maintenance and use going forward. That won't be a part of that, it'll just be the two towns.
Lee and I's talked, I plan on reaching out to Carmen and trying to sit down and try to come up with some different things, different scenarios, work through some different stuff, but 100% correct. It's just, right now, we're trying to capture the county because they're right there on the fence.
And they've signed it. The version you have has the Ron West signature on it. The county voted yesterday to approve it, and it's signed, so they're in. But it's, you know, it's conditioned upon, of course, the other two parties to the agreement signing it too. And I think Whiteland has approved it in this form.
They
right?
plan on taking it next week.
Okay.
Whenever their next meeting.
I mean, Carmen and Lynn have approved it, but it's not been formally approved. Like, so they will go through this process and conversation.
Have you at least seen a preliminary of here's what they anticipate building? Is it comparable to Graham Road? And you don't have to dig it out. I mean,
I can put it up on the screen if you want.
No, that's okay. The one that's out here that they did, other than the sign in the middle that you can't see around, and I know they have that there for a purpose, but as a well-constructed roundabout, it does its purpose. If that's similar to what they're wanting to do here, and we're not going to cut corners on it.
Yeah, it's proposed right now to be a single lane roundabout. Obviously, you come into it and you either go around or right out. There's not going to be multiple lanes coming into it. Quite honestly, there's not the right of way there to do that. I think early on in the thought process, some years ago, with Whiteland Road being the planned thoroughfare, that probably would have been applicable for a multi-lane roundabout going through there. That's no longer the case. Some of my questions to the county early on was specifically along that side, was making sure that the county isn't going to go through and just west of New Whiteland now widen the road to, you know, a 2-lane, and now we're going to be stuck with this roundabout that, you know, 7 years from now is going to have to be redone. As it's now, so powers can change and all that type of stuff. A lot of things can happen, but as it stands right now, there's no plan for all of that. So to your point, I think, you know, very similar to what is out there. You know, roundabouts do alleviate congestion.
Yeah.
It's
And that-
just whether people can figure out how to drive through.
They can.
And I was gonna say, so the majority of everything being built in Johnson County roundabout wise has been designed by Crossroads, and if you look at them, they're pretty well all identical.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I've gathered from other people is that it's kind of like a template type thing, they just, you know, do that, so I would assume that's what you'll expect, that's what a lot of the roundabouts in the county look like.
I think we're beyond the point of deciding whether we want to do one or not. That's an absolute nightmare over there, morning and evening at this point. We have to do something, and if it may not be the best of what we want, but if we have two other entities that are willing to say, okay, we're gonna throw a good chunk of money at this, you know, we bite the bullet on this agreement and then hope to get more of what we want in the latter agreement as far as the maintenance and things like that.
Well, and I would say probably, I don't know what percentage, the majority of arrangements like this, there aren't interlocal cooperation agreements about maintaining roads. It just gets done. For us, because of past experience and Dwayne being proactive on this, we would rather have it. We'd rather go ahead and decide now how we're going to take care of it over the next 20 years than try to figure that out as we go. But to not have that, I think, is typical. We're just trying to get at that too. For New Whiteland to have total control over this and do it just exactly the way they want, I think that the way that we ensure doing that is we back out and try to build it by ourselves. And we can't without cooperation because part of it is not in New Whiteland. I think to have this opportunity to have MPO funding for the lion's share of this cost and have two other Johnson County agencies participate is an opportunity. A great opportunity.
I follow John Parent on this. We gotta do something. Okay, I mean, that congestion there, it's only gonna get worse. We're seeing it on all the west side county roads. Okay, they've gotta do
405
something out at Tracy.
405 new homes right there at the corner.
Yeah, I mean, so it's for the betterment of all of us. I do have a level of trust of, the current group at Whiteland. They're neighbors, you share the commonality of the school and all of that. These are very valuable things to be talking about. I too, why not have two signs there? Or let's not have a sign on there and you have one on your side of the road and one on our side of the road. But I think that those points are very minuscule in the overall thing. I don't want to see this slip through, even if there's some discomfort, because I do believe that as time has gone on, there's a lot of cooperation, there's a lot of trust. They are neighbors, and I just think that both of us can be responsible enough to work through what I would consider to be minor issues compared to the major issue.
So it sounds to me like you want to make a motion to approve.
I want to say, I'm sorry to keep talking, but I want to say one more thing, not because I think this ought to really factor into your decision, but I don't want you to be surprised by it later. In this agreement, the obligation to acquire any additional right-of-way that is needed to do the project falls on the town.
There's nothing else I do want to see.
Where that additional right-of-way is located. So if additional right-of-way is needed in Whiteland, Whiteland has to acquire it through their effort and at their expense. If additional right-of-way is needed in New Island, that's on us. There's gonna be.
Well,
And,
go ahead, sorry.
and that seems fair to me. And that's what everyone else has agreed to, or Whiteland is agreeing to. And I'm telling you that not to talk you in or out of doing it, but there's going to come a point when the project gets closer that we're going to have to acquire right of way where Dwayne's going to show you, and it's going to be expensive. But back to the point made earlier, if we don't participate in this, there's going to have to be road improvements made to this intersection at some point by somebody in the future. We're going to have a hand in it. It's going to require additional right-of-way, and it's going to fall on New Whiteland to get it. So I think all that's consistent with, right, when we come to you in a year or whenever it is and tell you that we need to acquire right-of-way on the northeast corner, I don't want you to think back to this evening and say, you didn't tell us that part when we had this big conversation that night. And so I'm mentioning it to you now. But it makes perfect sense to me that that's who it ought to fall on. Show them where the right-of-way is going to be.
And can I say something on the right of way? Something that I wanted to submit, when we work with the Grandison Development, we work with them and Crossroads. Crossroads looked at the plans, and the right of way that Grandison was gonna be giving us was gonna be sufficient.
Yeah, it's
On
really
that
just,
side.
it's just the northeast corner.
Right.
Okay.
Dwayne, point to the northeast corner. No, that one home, that one lot.
Yeah.
Focus in on where that right of way is going to need to be. And really, we've got it everywhere else already, or we've got a commitment to dedicate it. But that's going to impact that one home there, right there, in a significant way. And so that will be another expense that is not a part of the third that we're paying for the construction of the project. That is in addition to it. But I don't think there's any way that this intersection could ever be improved without an additional right-of-way being gotten there. And because it's in New Island, it's on us, right? I just don't want this to jump up and surprise you when that time comes.
Dwayne, in the scope of work from Crossroads and their proposed fees, did that not include with what they proposed
It does.
right-of-way acquisition?
The soft costs are in there.
Okay, so I was gonna say, I thought that it was in there, so they have something
You're
built
right.
in already.
Good
So
point.
you-
Some of that money.
This light blue line here, That's kind of pretty much where they are anticipating the right of way to be, and they built the cost into the current proposal. The concern that we have is if for some reason it doesn't situate right in here, because again, this is just purely a concept, that we're so stinking close to that house. So.
But whatever we have to pay the property owner for the right of way is not built into the cost.
Correct. That's
So there you have it.
on us.
Is that any additional than what is already there? Is that what that would be?
What, this?
No, for what, and you may be able to answer on that one too, Lee, just curious, my thing. The cost that was built into the scope for acquisition of right of way would be basically the blue line. Anything over that would be what's not built into the cost?
No, the cost is them writing the legal description of the right of way.
Oh, see, I thought there was a description in that scope that for purchase of right of way already in there.
That's the way I understood it.
But it's not, they've not included in the cost what we would have to pay to the property owner to acquire the right of way.
I was under the impression it was, but.
That's
Well,
what
they can't know what that is. I mean, they can't know
Well,
what that
that's
number
true.
is.
That's true, because it hasn't been assessed.
Well, what I always see in projects like this is the engineer including what they expect their services to be related to right-of-way acquisition.
Dwayne, a question
So-
I have. Since that impacts that corner property, and does so in a larger way than anybody else's, what happens if it just
So
shifts?
And it may, because of, and I think I heard Matt, you and I were discussing, and Matt was talking about, when Gradison came to us on all of this stuff, we had them give us ample right of way for the roundabout. Now, so once on this concept, they didn't have that information at that time, so they've gone through and they've kind of tweaked a few little things, so once they go through and redesign, it may actually shift just a little bit farther west. The problem is, I was gonna do a touch screen and try to paste that thing up, but it wasn't gonna work. Utilities down here, so we can't shift too far to the west because of super high pressure gas mains, like 2 12-inch high pressure gas mains and things like that, so again, it's just a concept. It could shift just a little bit to the west.
When you're saying a little bit,
Well,
10 feet?
maybe, I don't know.
You've got to watch your approaches coming into these roundabouts too, because if you start moving the circle, the middle too much, then you're having to change the approach coming in, and you're having to design the roads that intersect at that roundabout in ways that start adding cost to the approaches of the 4 roads. Well, the 2 roads at 4 points. So anyway, I know it's not on the agenda. I got it as I was walking out my door. We had planned to talk about it and give you an update, but because the county's approved it and we have it in front of us, if you are at a point tonight where you are inclined to take action, want to approve it, that'd be fine. If you want more time to consider it, I think it's okay to say to the county and Whiteland that we had a thorough discussion, we presented it to you, you've taken it under consideration, and we'll be taking action on it shortly, if that feels better.
Well, I'd prefer that. I mean, we've got a 17-page document written by lawyers that none of the 5 of us have read.
That's right.
I don't feel like I can vote for it tonight.
Well, and I'm with John here. Given those, we at least should have the preliminary conversations of those concerns. You know, just the assurance for the sake of the residents of both towns that need this so desperately. Is there some way that we, as well as the town of Whiteland, can agree we're gonna hammer out the particulars in some other way?
I don't know why there couldn't just be a discussion.
Because this says we're not. This
Yeah,
is
it
what gonna
does.
drive the bus.
Yeah, it absolutely does.
What you're saying is
But-
get some assurance that we'll have a neighborly
that we can
discussion.
have this other agreement, like I think Lee was talking about how are we gonna take care of the maintenance? Can we come up with some conclusion on signage, if said signage is supposed to be in there? Because what I think I heard was the one trump that we have is the whole wastewater. Storm drainage, sorry, thank you. That's a huge driver in this. Is that true?
Yeah, that's a driver, and I just want to be clear that signage was a hypothetical thing, you know. That
Oh, but it was real.
Well, it was real, but that was the simplest thing that I could mention. You know, it's there is concerns on the final side of it, and rightly so. But
Okay, but at this point, I mean, if there's some trepidation of, okay, they're not only driving the bus, they're providing the bus, they're telling us where on the bus we have to sit, okay? Is there not at least a conversation with Carmen or somebody to say, okay, give us an idea of what your thoughts are on some of this before we, we're not gonna hold your feet to the fire necessarily, but it's just a conversation.
In front of us.
I think that would alleviate at least a lot of concerns with people of, we're gonna get a flashing billboard out in the middle of this thing or something that we have no say so. But if we could get an idea of, here's what our thoughts are, their thoughts, I think that, and then if they want to drive the bus, fine. At least at that point, we're not being run over by it.
So, yeah, I think that's fine. I don't want this to get overblown either. 3/4 of this is going to be in the annexed territory of New Whiteland. It's our right of way. I mean, they can't go in our right of way and do something that we don't approve of. Our zoning ordinance applies to it. I mean, they can't put a sign in there that our zoning ordinance doesn't allow. I'm not really so concerned about that kind of thing. I would prefer to have an agreement at the outset that talks about how we're going to maintain this thing when the need arises. And whether that's 3/4 and a quarter, or if we think it's falling apart or chuck holes are a problem, or what we had here with Tracy Road, that this is how one can trigger the other to participate in a maintenance project and share costs. I'd love to get all that now rather than leave it open for the future. But I think that if that can't be done, I think it would be really unfortunate for this to get away. And I think that the county has approved it and signed it. And if we decide that we want to make changes and go back to the county and have this agreement go before the commissioners again with New Whiteland's changes, I don't know what will be done with it at that point. And I don't want to be afraid of negotiating or you getting what you think the town needs. But I also want to say there may be risks in us taking what the county's already approved, changing it and sending it back to them, especially since they started to kind of cave in on us. Mm-hmm. And one of them did not voted no on this. So we've got one no vote against it already.
I do not want to lose that agreement. That's why I say kind of in the aftermath. I don't mind having a preliminary conversation. We've got a special meeting coming up.
Well, that's actually after our meeting, though.
And in fact, I would ask you, if you're not inclined to be open to calling a special meeting over the next 2 weeks or so, just on this subject, particularly if Whiteland approves it at their meeting next week.
Well, I don't think.
Again, I don't want to be afraid, but I also, if this goes away, it's going to be a bad outcome.
Okay, with that being said, and my particular hesitation about us losing this opportunity, I'll go ahead and make a motion.
I can offer you another option.
Before you do, let me throw this out.
Okay, please
Okay.
do. I retract
don't-
that
I
past
don't
statement.
think it's unreasonable in any way, shape, or form. This was dumped on our lap at
It
5
was.
minutes till 5. Okay, they wrote it. They've agreed on it between them and the county. They've had all this time to look it over. If we said we need to wait till either 2 weeks from now or our next meeting before we're comfortable with it, where I would be extremely concerned is if at that point either one of them said, nope, either do it now or
No,
we're done.
that
Because
won't
if they do,
That won't
now we got a problem.
That
If
won't
they
happen.
don't, great. That's all we're asking. Give us the ample time that you guys had to look it over.
So let me offer what I think are some options. I think to decide tonight that we're going to take the 17-page document that you just got, as John Purdy said, and we're going to read it, and we're going to make decisions, discuss it further, or make a decision on it later. That's fine. That's fine. And that's exactly what we'll tell them. And I'll say too, I'm feeling a bit bad right now too. I want to acknowledge that I've had this thing in a working draft for a long time. We have been making tweaks back and forth. We've been waiting for the county to finally settle on its position on whether it's going to contribute toward construction costs or not. And there was a period of time there, right on the time, in fact, the same day of the evening that Ron West was here talking about the sewer connection, where we were not at all sure that they were going to participate at all. It really was. It really was uncertain. And then it came together. I didn't know that the commissioners were going to be voting on it today. I didn't think it was going to come back signed today. I got it and shot it right down here to you. You could have seen the working draft of it and been familiar with it before tonight had I been sending it to you. My thought was we're going to get it in a form where all the attorneys representing the three entities agree, which happened a day or two ago, and then we'll get it in front of you. So that's why it has landed on you with no time to look at it. And in hindsight, I would have shown you this is where we are at this moment in time. But I think your options are to do what I just said. We're gonna take some time, give us time, and we'll let you know. The other option I think would be to say, we're going to read it and we're going to go ahead and set a special meeting so we don't drag this out any longer and have a 10-minute meeting to address this again. The other option would be to say we're going to approve it and authorize John Perrin to sign it unless any one of us notifies John prior to 5 o'clock a week from tonight that we have an objection.
Okay. So
And then we will tell John not to sign it, and we will pull back.
let me ask a couple questions here. Are we under legislative business or new business?
It doesn't matter.
Okay, well, that does to me. Okay, because now you're informing us and, this is new there. I've heard what you guys have said. I really want this roundabout, but we all do. I do think, now knowing how rushed, it is prudent for us to look at it.
I wouldn't be comfortable, even though, as you pointed out, a bunch of lawyers wrote this, and I'm only going to understand 60% of it.
It reads pretty well. It reads pretty
But
well.
if I don't at least crack it open,
Yeah.
I'm not comfortable with it, and I'm fine with a special session next week, the following week. I'll make it work.
Let me say too, me sending it to you to last, I didn't do that with the expectation that we'd walk out of here with it signed. I wouldn't be surprised if we did, but I don't mean, by sending it to you at the last minute, I don't want you to feel pressured that you have to do something tonight.
The last recommendation or the last option you said, we vote on it tonight, say barring one of the five of us raising an objection by 5 p.m. next Wednesday. I'm okay with that. That gives me time to read through the thing, and if I've got a real bone with it, I can throw the flag and we all come back together and talk about it.
I think that would be a way to advance this and still give you all the opportunity to read it at your leisure.
I'm perfectly fine with that, John.
I think it's
Yeah, I don't wanna lose it, but
No, I
you
don't
guys have convinced me, I need to put the brakes.
I can't vote on it without reading it.
Yeah.
That's where I'm.
Okay, I'm gonna throw a monkey
should
wrench
be.
into that. I'm out of the country until next Friday and I will not have any communication.
Well, it could be,
So let's make it next Saturday
yeah, or the following
I mean, you
Monday.
could respond tomorrow morning if you wanted. I mean, we don't have to.
Well, no, I
wait till
can't sign
Wednesday.
it.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah.
No, you can sign it and we just hold it.
Okay,
And we
that-
just wouldn't
okay,
deliver it.
then
We
I'm
just
fine with
wouldn't
that.
deliver it.
Okay,
Is there a
But-
deadline? I mean.
I'm sorry?
Is the deadline coming up?
No.
Does it happen, I mean,
No.
should it wait till the next meeting?
I don't know that it, I guess I just don't know whether it causes anyone, there isn't a date that we have been given by which this has to be done.
No,
Cause
but,
this project is in 2 years, right?
well, and that's the other side of it, the longer we wait, the longer.
Longer the
it
money gets
pushes-
pushed
it
out,
pushes it
yeah.
out. Now, that said, I do think there is some consternation a little bit by how long it has taken everything to progress and move forward and things like that.
I think, like to say what you said, yes, the project is in a few years. I think if Whiteland had their way with this, design should have started 2 months ago. Even though the project isn't perfect.
What if you all were to vote to approve it and authorize, John Parent to sign it and instruct me not to deliver it
until
To-
X date.
to the other two parties until after until June 12th. And if I hear from any one of you prior to that time, then I simply won't deliver it.
Yep, that works.
That's a great solution.
Okay, so.
I will make a motion for that.
Motion by Dennis,
Everything that Lee said.
I'll second everything that Lee said.
all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5 affirmative.
Thank you. I'm sorry it got
That
so
was, that
unwieldy.
was still new business, so I think.
It was.
No,
Yeah, I thought it was.
anything else new, gentlemen? I
Nope.
know, you're good. I know you had something, Dave.
Yes.
Do you remember what it was?
Still want to do it?
So, earlier in the year, we adopted a pickup truck from DPW for our fire marshal. Kind of at a point where, we want to start getting that outfitted for him. Now that he's getting himself established and program established and all that. I've already used lighting, emergency lighting that we had around the station and storage from old vehicles. And actually have pretty much had the whole thing outfitted, with what we had. And I think I've spent like $300 in parts. So saved a lot of money there, which is great. But we need to think about storage now for tools and equipment. The plan is to do a topper and a custom slide out tray, storage tray for it. I would like to go ahead and go forward with getting a topper now. Kind of want to hold off on the storage tray just because of the cost of those systems. I'd like to wait till later in the year, but I would like to go ahead and get the topper on there so that we can store some equipment inside safely. We have reached out to 5 different companies since March for quotes, and surprisingly, I've only heard back from 2. Markin Sales up in Indianapolis, they gave us a quote for $4,000. That's for the cab, the hardware, and the installation. Tillman's, theirs comes in at about $3,200. So I'm looking, just for your approval, to go ahead with purchase of that topper. I think it's probably, unless you guys have an opinion, I would say we go with Tillman's. At this point, we have the money in our budget for it, so that's not a concern. But just need your approval because of the cost.
Okay.
Yeah, it's 3,200.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, yeah, just for that, yeah. For that part of it. Originally, I was getting a quote for the whole system, which was over 5,000, so.
Yeah, so if it's
How much
under,
is the trade stuff? Did you get a quote on that?
So, I've only got one back officially. I've gotten some verbal estimates. We're looking at around 8,000 for the tray system.
how much?
About 8,000.
Oh, 8,000. Okay, I thought you said 80,000. Like, you get a whole truck for that.
That's about 8,000 for the tray system is the estimate, but I don't have official quotes
Okay,
on that yet. That's just verbal estimates.
yeah. As far as the topper, I mean, you can do that.
Okay.
Yep.
All
Yeah.
right. We'll go forward with
Um,
that.
Just, I have heard nothing but good things about your fire marshal. That he's doing an excellent job. And people are very, very happy, and they're happy with the progression of things that we're seeing now. So if you want to pass that on, that's,
I will. Yeah, I think he's taken a very good approach. He has already visited most of the businesses in town. And his focus, and we discussed it when we started, because it's been so long since we had a fire marshal. We weren't gonna come out, you know, just guns blazing kind of thing. He's really put effort into making relationships, educating. He's really big on education, and which is great. And he's just he wants to establish a baseline, bring everybody up to where they need to be for minimum safety, and then we'll go from there down the road. So I think he's doing a good job staying on the focus of that
good.
as well. So I'll pass your words along to him as well.
Great. You have anything else? New business?
Not right now, no.
Okay, Matt? Dwayne? Good.
Yeah.
Ordinance, let's see, we're tabling that one, are we not? 2025-01,
Yeah, I don't think we know.
that's the non-emergency calls.
Right.
Okay. Angela, you have a transfer.
Yeah, it just has 3 things to help clean up some of the lines that are negative and move stuff around like Matt was talking about for the Westler, and I have a line in mine that's negative and one PH.
Okay. Any questions? Okay, do we have a motion?
A motion.
Second.
Second by John Schlotski. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5 affirmative. And are we gonna do the sewer availability fees?
I want to introduce it, please.
Okay.
Yeah. So this has been hanging around since the beginning of the year. Bob Reynolds did a rate study for us for recurring rates to increase our sewer rates, but also did a study for increasing sewer availability fees from $1,100 to $2,430, and we need to get that done. And we plan on trying to do it at the same time he comes to present his rate study on the other. But we're getting more concerned that we need to get that done because we may wait a while until we see what project costs are going to be on the other stuff. I think Matt had hoped that we actually adopt it tonight. I didn't get it queued up and ready. So because I didn't have the notice of public hearing. We've noticed the public hearing for our July meeting. We'll introduce the ordinance tonight. If that's okay, then you can vote on it after the public hearing in July and actually adopt it. So what you have is ordinance,
2025-07.
yeah, help me, whatever that is. It is an ordinance to increase the sewer availability fee. That is only charged when someone connects to the sewer system. It is now $1,100. It would be increased to $2,430. That number is supported by the rate study done by Bob Reynolds. We have fallen sort of woefully behind over the years on the $1,100. That $2,430 is still considerably less than what other jurisdictions around us are charging. But that's what our rate consultant tells us we need to be charging, and we certainly want to have that in place before we start adding homes. So if it's all right, I would ask that it simply be introduced, or note that it is introduced tonight for your consideration, set for public hearing in July.
Okay,
All right,
Very good.
thanks.
Okay, at this time, that is everything on this evening's agenda. The meeting is open to the public. If you have a question or comment, we ask for your name and address for the record. Yes, ma'am.
Dolores Robertson, 9 Telmore Drive. I have some pictures, and I have those out too.
I'm going to interrupt, and I don't mean to be rude, but I think this will sound good to you. I hope. Ms. Robertson? Is that
Robertson.
Robertson, okay. Ms. Robertson here is tonight because of a drainage problem that she has that exists along the north property line of the Wits End property.
Yes, it was caused, we actually have pictures of after the dirt was delivered.
Yeah, let me go ahead
And
because
it's not just us, it's our neighbors that have also.
we talked about this through the day. Let me tell you what we've tried to get figured out here.
All right.
Matt had talked with me about it because several of the neighbors had complained about water being diverted over onto their property and standing water much worse than what it used to be. I asked Matt to figure out whether there is a drainage easement that runs along the property. What ended up happening was some dirt was brought in on the Wits End property and deposited there along the property line. And since that dirt has been there, the drainage has gotten worse. Right? Am I saying that right? That was after the dirt was brought in.
I have pictures of what's going on, if I can hand them out, and then that way they can see, it's actually.
I think we've seen it.
Okay, good.
Yeah, so, yeah.
The dirt has been pushed into our fence line along with cement. We had to actually go out there and try to get the dirt because we couldn't move the cement out of the way.
Mhm.
And you can see that the water has been dammed up along the fence
Yeah.
line all the way from 31, the houses that are along that.
Okay. Well, Lee kind of filled me in right before the meeting, so like he said, I think if
So-
you can finish where you and Matt, I
So
think
we're-
you guys are gonna be happy.
Where we have had issues like this in the past, where one property owner has done something on their property that has diverted water onto the neighbor, the town's position typically has been that's a dispute between the neighbors that they need to work out. The exception is where we have platted drainage easements, or where what a property owner has done has affected our municipal drainage system. We have swales, we have ditches, we have intake or receiving structures into our storm sewer. And so when Matt asked me about this, I said, I think the first thing to find out is there a drainage easement along the property? There is. It's platted on the original plat of the subdivision. The dirt that Mrs. Robertson's talking about has been placed on that drainage easement. It is obstructing the flow of stormwater through that part of the property on that easement that flows into a receiving structure that deposits stormwater into a storm sewer that is owned and maintained by the town. We have a stormwater management ordinance that addresses just these sorts of things. You know, we charge a stormwater fee, a rate for our stormwater to collect money from residents in order to be able to maintain our stormwater system. This is part of that system. And so it's not just, the town, I think in this case, can and should intervene, because this water is stormwater that we have been directing into our system for years. That because this dirt has been placed on the easement where this stormwater has flowed in the past, it is causing that stormwater to pool and be diverted over onto the neighbor and causing the problems that they're complaining about. And I think unlike what we've done in the past with mini barns and garden beds and fences and things, this is a time when the town, and as it turns out it's Matt, is our MS4, our stormwater management coordinator. I think he is authorized under the ordinance to instruct the property owner who has put this dirt on this easement to remove it and to reestablish the grade that was there previously, so the water will flow as it did in the past and won't cause the problem that you people have been experiencing. So our plan would be, Matt's plan would be as the MS4 coordinator, to contact the property owner and tell them they've got to remove the dirt and reestablish the grade as it existed before. And it's not that we're doing something different with respect to these property owners than what we have with others.
Right.
This is a different situation because it is a drainage easement that has been collecting and depositing stormwater into our system. And so I think it falls under our ordinance and under the jurisdiction of our coordinator. So in talking with Matt about it, I think he's still looking into it. I think the first thing we talked about was whether there was an easement. He's determined there is. There may be some more information for him to gather, but I think this is where this is headed, and it's something he can do on his own. And in fact, we have an MS4 coordinator to perform these tasks. It doesn't need to come to the council. So that's how we've analyzed it, and that's what I think Matt intends to do.
Well, thank you so much for looking into it. Like I said, it's not just affecting us, it's affecting like 5 or 6 people in the neighborhood. And it almost got into our shed and our garage the last time, it was that bad.
Yeah.
And
And it wasn't like that in the past.
no,
Right.
and
So we know
that
it.
dirt, and there's like big clumps of cement, and we don't know where it all came from. We just know that it's never been in our fence, and now it's there, and once it gets out, then the water is free to move through to the sewers, storm sewer.
Yeah, and that's the intent.
Yes, thank you so much.
No problem. Thanks for letting us know. Anyone else? Being no other business, we are adjourned.
That needs to make its way to that end of the.
Thank you very much.
Oh, I didn't even see that you had